Hello, everyone. This is Orhan Erdem, Associate Professor of Finance at Rockford University. Welcome to my podcast, Financially Yours, where I will share my perspectives on everyday economic and financial issues. Today, I will talk about incentives, which are rewards or costs that influence people's decisions and behavior. Conventionally, it's presumed that receiving payments for something boosts one's motivation to work, while being fined lessens one's willingness to take that action. Is that always so? Let me start the podcast with a story which hails from an Israeli school about 2 decades ago. A school dealing with an all too familiar issue: parents habitually late in picking up their kids. In this school, tired teachers and the principal were in search of a solution. After countless hours of spent pondering, they stumbled upon an idea: a negative incentive, a fine. The plan was simple. Parents who dared to show up late would be charged a fine, a nominal amount that they believed would nudge parents into timely appearances. They planned to charge tardy parents 10 Israeli shekels, roughly $3 then, hoping this would encourage promptness. Besides, the fines collected would boost school resources. It seemed a win-win solution, a double victory. With the hope of solving the pickup problem, both the principal and the teachers were excited to see a smaller number of late parents. However, their idea rebounded in an unexpected way. Before the fine, late parents felt the sting of guilt. After, that guilt dissolved. With just $3, they could buy off their guilt and show up late without remorse. Instead of declining, the number of latecomers actually increased, presenting an ironic outcome that showcased the unpredictable nature of human behavior. How the incentives shape our lives. What is the best strategy for building an incentive, whether in a professional environment or personal context? Today, I will host an expert, Uri Gneezy, from University of California, San Diego, with me. Let me spell his name for you: Gneezy. Dr. Gneezy has published a new book called Mixed Signals, which I read and enjoyed very much. In this book, he shows us how our actions send signals that shape the world around us, and how to design better incentives for better results in our life and work. Welcome, Yuri. Good afternoon, right? So you are in.
Well, good afternoon. Yes, I'm in Tel Aviv now. Thank you. It's great to be here, to be with you.
Thank you so much. Could you please start by introducing yourself and give us a brief overview of how you became interested in behavioral economics and behavioral sciences?
Sure. So I'm an economist. I started by studying economics, and that's how I started my PhD, actually, also in Tilburg. First of all, I wasn't good at it. You need to know math very well, and I don't. I did my undergrad in Tel Aviv, and then I took a class in game theory for the social sciences that was taught by Eddie Deckel. It was such an inspiring class that I wanted to do my PhD in game theory. Little did I know that it's basically game theory is math, and it's definitely not my comparative advantage. So at some point, I was introduced to behavioral economics by my advisor, Eric Van Damme, and the other people that were over there, and started to like it. And I'm fascinated by the way people behave. So economists think that I know a bit of psychology, which I don't, but I like to pretend as if I do. And within behavioral economics, which I find interesting, the stuff that is really my thing is incentive. What really motivates us? Because I think that in order to understand the world, you need to understand how we react to incentives. And that's what I focused since then. So we're talking about 26 years since my PhD. Now, when we design incentives or receive incentives, we also send and receive signals about what's important to us. And the key to successful incentives is to understand how these signals work.
Thanks so much. We are fascinated by your work too. So let's start with what a mixed signal is. So one day you went to Disneyland, where kids under 3-year-old are accepted for free, and the rest, 3 and older, is $117. And you had a son who was 3 years old. How did this story go?
I like this story because it really shows how you can tell your kids and you can tell people and you can say whatever you want when it's cheap. If you ask me, should you lie? No, you shouldn't. And I had to tell my son, like all of us, we educate our kids, you shouldn't lie. But then when you're faced with incentives, in the example you gave, the incentive was $117. I did not hesitate, and I said that my son is almost 3. It was a couple of months after his 3rd birthday. And we got in for free, but it wasn't really free. There are no free lunches. So that's exactly what they talked about, because my son was there and he heard me telling a lie. So then he asked me, Daddy, how come you said that only bad people lie and you just did? Right. So that's an example of mixed signal, because I told him one thing. I told him, look, you shouldn't lie. But then when we face the incentives, I lie. So which signal is he going to learn? Is he going to learn that you shouldn't lie, or is he going to learn that you should lie only when the incentives are there?
Does he still remember that?
Well, he asked me about it. He does not remember that, but like many stories from our childhood, we remember them when our parents tell them time and again to us. So,
So what do you think Disney should have used as a strategy then?
Disney, a simple way that you can think about is just to demand that the parents will bring the birth certificate or something like that with them, right? But that's not, you go to Disney because it's the happiest place on earth. You don't go in order to show you're supposed to trust someone in this one big happy family. What Disney could do is, first of all, demand that the child will be with you, like in my case. But then they can take it a step further. They can ask the child to say, so for example, the cashier can ask the child, did you or didn't you have your 3rd birthday already? Now I can clearly coach my son to lie, but that's a much bigger lie already. So I don't think that I would have done that. I don't think that I would tell him, Ron, you should lie when they ask you. Right? There is a limit to what I'm willing to do for money.
Well, many people love Seinfeld, and you tell a story case between Jerry and Elaine. So what is this, and how does this teach us? So let's go from stories from your book.
Right. Stories are good. I like stories. That's at least how I remember the world. And what I'm trying to say is that incentives really tell a story. That's the point, right? Gifts are a great example of signals. Economists are puzzled by gifts because they make no economic sense. In Jerry and Elaine's example from Seinfeld, before that they were lovers and now they're just friends. And what can they do? And Jerry goes with George to buy a birthday gift, and they go around, and at the end Jerry gives Elaine money, cash, and she's really upset. She opens up the gift and she expects something, and then she finds only cash, and then she asks him, what are you, my uncle? And the point is that the signal that you send with the gift is really important. It's not just the money. It's also, oh, I spent time, I spent effort, I thought about you. Here's something that I knew that you'll want, even if you didn't know, and things like that. So the message that the gift sent is really important.
So many economists criticize behavioral economists in the sense that it doesn't cover culture. So do you think that these kind of examples, gift and money or gift cards, behavior changes from Japan to United States or Israel to Turkey?
For sure. And I don't think that that's right from economists to criticize behavioral economists. I think that in general, economists tend to ignore this. And for example, competitive incentive will probably go very well in Turkey or in Israel. You're from Turkey, I'm from Israel. It will probably go well in Japan or Thailand. It might be rude to compete with someone else. So it won't work well. And there are many, many other examples that culture is important. Culture is not just between countries. It could be within a country, between taxi drivers and teachers and lawyers and bankers and you name it, right? So they might have different cultures. So clearly, when you think about the message will not be general. The message that you might get from it or I might get from it might be different, and any subgroup. And you need to really target the incentive to the culture that you're after.
Thank you. Let's go to another story. One of my favorite movies is The Godfather, which still plays in the top 3 movies of all time on IMDb. I checked it before the interview, by the way. It's in second place. So the movie won 3 Oscars, one of which was Best Actor for Marlon Brando. I don't know how many times I watched the movie, but I didn't know the rest of the story. Can you please go ahead with Marlon Brando and his signal?
As an actor, that's the highest achievement you can have. Nothing is bigger than that. For scientists, it's the Nobel Prize. When the award was there, he sent someone else, a Native American woman, to stage. And basically, she said that he is refusing to accept the award, and the reason was the way Native Americans were depicted in movies at the time. So the typical Western had John Wayne go and kill the savage, primitive Indians that would attack the innocent white settlers, which is, of course, very different than reality, right? So they didn't show the narrative. They didn't show that the Native Americans were there long before. They were peaceful until the white people came and basically took everything from them. So we're talking about 50 years ago. It was very progressive for that time there, and he wanted to protest. And the idea is that in general, awards are very often very cheap. So the Oscars is not doesn't cost anything. As far as I know, they don't give any monetary award. So the Nobel Prize comes with a lot of money. The Oscars doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. But it gives you a huge honor, and it's a strong incentive for many people. And one of the things, the story that you mentioned, is who gives you the award. Do you respect the people who give you the award or not? That could be important. So if someone really important gives it, they might care about it more than if someone that they don't care about. And there are many other factors that go into this, but awards are definitely a very strong incentive that you can give that often doesn't cost anything, but just gives us some kind of pride in what we're doing.
Yeah, it was very courageous too, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, let's switch to incentives more. So when one hears the word incentive, we mostly think about monetary incentives, and this is obviously not true. So what different incentives are at work?
Can you imagine that someone is really brave in the battlefield, a soldier, and receives some kind of award for that? That's clearly not monetary. If it would come with money, it would be really strange. Here's, you're a hero. Here's your award, and here's a check for $10,000. That would be really weird. That would diminish actually the award, right? So, are you trying to say that I risked my life for $10,000 or $1 million or whatever? No, I risked it for my buddies. I risked it for the country. In general, there are many other things that go with that are incentive. It could be social status. It could be just feeling good about myself. It could be, like I said, many other things. Promotion at work, receiving the Oscars. So receiving the Oscars doesn't come directly with money, but maybe later on you can earn more money. But it's more than that. It's more than the money that is associated with it.
You are also giving Uber and Coca-Cola example in the book. Like, what are the good ways and bad ways of incentivizing people?
Think about drivers, right? So you have drivers that are paid per hour. Those drivers are going to be much more polite. They're going to drive much more safely than drivers that are paid per passenger. If you're paid per passenger, you'll drive like crazy in order to actually make the money. So you'll be more efficient. You'll strategically think where to stand, say, as a taxi driver, what times to take your break, how to get as many passengers as you can. And if you're paid per hour, you're not going to do that, but you're going to be more polite and maybe drive more safely. And what Uber and other rideshare companies were able to do is to add another dimension of incentives, which is the ratings. So now the Uber driver, if the car will be dirty or if the driver will not drive in a safe way, you can punish them by giving them a low rating. And if they are behaving, you can give them high rating. You can give them 5 stars. So interestingly, you can actually add another layer of incentives without any cost to you. So that's when we talk about the solution, that's a great example.
Amazon has the same thing. Like, so when you purchase something, you rate the seller. But this time sellers add another layer on top of it. They send you like tiny little gifts to receive some like good ratings from you. I see that AliExpress from China, they do it. They just send you emails. Hey, can you please rate us for $1? So it's just
wow. Like, I didn't know that this can be done. I've never seen that. That sounds almost cheating.
Literally. So we mostly think that by offering money, we might make things work, which obviously not true. So monetary incentives might not be always working. And you give this blood donation example in your book.
Well, so that example is very old. It's over 50 years old. It's a book by an economist called Titamus at the time. And his example was indeed, like you said, that in the US, people got paid for donating blood, and in the UK, they didn't. And his claim, the empirical work that he has was not really convincing, was not great, but his claim was that the quality of blood was higher in the UK where people donated the blood than in the US where people were paid. So if people were paid, you got the homeless people or the drug addict people to give the blood, and they were more likely to have diseases. And the idea is that if I go to donate blood, I feel really good about myself. I did something good. I get what I call in the book a positive self-signal. So it's a concept that is a bit hard for some people to understand, but basically what it means is that I don't really know how good or bad I am. I look at my actions and I learn from it about myself. And if I go to donate blood, it means that I waste a couple of hours, you stick a needle into me, it's not a pleasant experience, and as a result, I can feel great about myself. I can even tell my colleagues at work, well, sorry, I missed the meeting that one, in the morning I was donating blood. I can show off, right? I can brag. But if you imagine that you pay me $50 for doing this, I'm not going to spend half a day for $50. That's not worth it to me. Right? So you're changing the meaning of what I'm doing. Before that, I did it because it made me feel good, because I thought that I'm doing something good for the world. And now you basically I think, well, I'm doing it for $50. So standard economics would say, when you keep everything else the same and you add another monetary incentive, in this case $50, you'll get more of the behavior. What we are saying, the behavioral economists, that no, slow down. It changes the meaning of what you're saying. The message that you send to others and to yourself changes. And the solution, the way to really solve something like that, imagine that instead of $50, they'll give you a coffee mug with the blood bank logo on it. And now, it clearly costs less than $50. You don't need another coffee mug. But you can use it for self-signaling. So every morning when you drink coffee, you can look at yourself and say, wow, Uri, you're a great guy. You donated blood. If you do the incentives in the right way, you can actually get more. Even if you're still using money, you can, instead of telling you, okay, I'll give you $50 for donating blood, I can frame it as, I'll give you $50 to reimburse you for the Uber rides that you had to take.
Oh, okay. The framing is also important, huh?
Exactly. So then it's not that I give you a bribe, but I reimburse you. That sounds more innocent.
Another interesting example was the Israeli schools, right?
Right. It's an old paper of mine with Alvaro Stachini from 2000, I think. So it's 23 years already old. I think about it is old because my girls are now older. My two girls, but they were at the daycare at the time. And sometimes we would come late to pick them up. And
I still have the same problem.
Yeah, okay. Good for you. Good for you. They grow up too fast. So when you had to pick them up, you do your best to be there on time. Then the principal at the daycare where my daughters were imposed a fine of what was $3 at the time if you came more than 10 minutes late. Now you're saying, okay, if it's only $3, that's fine. Then I might as well use it as a service like that. What was interesting, so we ran an experiment in which we had 10 daycares, and 6 of them, if I remember correctly, we introduced the fine, and 4 of them were the control group. And we found that more parents came late
when there's money incentive.
When there was a fine. We did it for 10 weeks, and then what we did was we stopped the fine. If you were in the control, you never saw a fine. You didn't know that there was a fine. If you were in the treatment group, you had a period of 10 weeks in which there was a fine, and then once I stopped giving you a fine, you'll stop using it, because now you're not paying for babysitting. So that after we removed the fine, the parents still came late.
Very interesting. Did you send your paper to the principals in Israel?
I spoke with some principals about that. In general, they were not big fan of this. We have a companion paper, and the idea in both of them is that what we like to call pay enough or don't pay at all. So give enough fine or don't fine at all, because small fines will only backfire, will give you the opposite of what you intended to do.
So incentives are basically signals, right? So signaling is important. And you mentioned another story, the success of Toyota Prius against Honda. I have a friend who is a Prius fan, by the way. He would love to listen to your insights. Could you please mention about the relationship between Honda and Toyota Prius?
back in the early 2000s, if you drove a Prius, if you drove a hybrid car, it was either Honda or Toyota, and those were really bad cars, right? So you could get a much better car for less money. Well, turns around that that's not so bad, because if you want to signal that you care about the environment, then you can buy this car, this hybrid car, and everyone will know, wow, he cares about the environment. Otherwise, why would he drive such a bad car? Today, Prius is a competitive car, right? Today, the hybrid cars are competitive. The electric cars are, if you drive a Tesla, it's not because you care about the environment necessarily. It could be that just you like the fancy car. Back then, it really meant that you care about the environment. So that was a strong signal that you do that. Now, in 2003, both Honda and Toyota redesigned the car. Honda decided to use the Honda Civic, which makes lots of sense as a basis for the model, which makes lots of sense. Probably the engineers pushed for that, because then
Civic was a good car. I used it like around 2000.
It's a very good car. Yeah, exactly. It's a very reliable car, and you don't have to redesign it. You can use the old parts. Everything makes sense, right? It's a good car. Why change if it works? But then if you entered the parking lot in your work, no one knew that you're driving a hybrid car, because it looked like you're driving a good old Civic.
On the Civic, right?
So you're driving a bad car because you care about the environment, but no one else knows about it. The Toyota engineers were much smarter. They completely redesigned the car. Cost a bit more, but it sent the signal that you want to send. The signal is, when you entered the parking lot, everyone knew that you care about the environment. Otherwise, why would you drive a bad car, right?
Prius was totally hybrid, right?
Was hybrid, and you saw it because it's a different car. The design was completely new, and you knew when you saw it, the design is not that different today. You knew that this is a hybrid car, and that sent the signal that you wanted to send. By the way, when we talk about culture, that's an example where this incentive really worked on people who cared about sending a signal that they care about the environment. If you're a large pickup truck driver that just wants power and to be high on the road, these incentives will mean nothing to you. Right?
So it won't work in Texas?
It won't work on some people in Texas, right? So not everyone in Texas drives a pickup truck and have a shotgun in his car, but some people do. On them, it's not going to work.
Right, but it worked in 2000. Okay, great. So a couple of weeks ago, CEO of Google and Alphabet, Sundar Pichai, said, "Reward effort, not outcomes." And you are talking about this in the context of innovation and failure. Can you please elaborate on this a little bit more? What should companies punish, failure or inaction, and why? And you give Kodak and Blockbuster example, I think.
Right. So there are a few layers in what you asked. Let's start with the end. So I'm consulting as part of my fun in life. I consult companies. And my impression is that the companies that can really benefit from consulting are the successful companies. Because if your company doesn't work well, if things are not working well, you're already putting so much attention, you're doing your best, you have all these experts that come in, it's very hard to contribute to. On the other hand, if you're running a successful company, you're probably ignoring some very simple things. So Kodak ignored the digital camera, and Blockbuster ignored the streaming and DVDs at first, right? So they had a perfect world, and they really ignored it. So just as a side note, those are the successful companies actually need help with thinking about what to do much more. So creativity is a great example of places in which you tell people that they should do one thing, but then your incentive send a very different signal. And most companies I know will tell you need to be creative. And that's also in our profession, right? You do research, we want you to be creative. We don't want you to do an epsilon research work that we call, something really small variation of what's out there. We want you to try completely new things. The problem is that when you try new things, you also increase the chance that you'll fail, because you increase the variance. If you increase the variance, sometimes you'll be more successful, sometimes you'll fail. And many companies punish failure, which is a mistake. If you punish failure, then people will not be creative. Why would I try new things if I know that if I'll fail, I won't get promoted, I won't get Maybe I'll even be fired. And in many cases, even when you see that it's not going the way you want it, you'll keep chasing it, you'll keep trying, although it would have been, at this point, it would have been much better to give up and say, look, it failed, let's move on, because you don't want to admit, because you don't want to suffer the penalty that comes with failure, right? So the right thing to do when people are trying new things is to have a debrief after that in which you ask what happened, why did it happen, and what can we do better. Now, if when you see the why did it happen, it's because I didn't put enough effort and I screwed up somehow, then punish me, that's fine. But if I did everything right, it's just that the idea was interesting, but it didn't work, then you should say, okay, great, we learned from it. Let's see what we can do in the future. So I run experiments for, much of the research that I do is with experiments. Very often I have ideas about what's going to happen, and then I go to the lab and something different happens. Now, in many cases, that's more interesting because it's a new intuition that you can get from it. And if not, you should cut your losses and move on. That's part of life, right? Mm-hmm. But again, don't tell your employees that they should be creative, but then punish them if they fail. That's not going to get you what you want.
I also really loved your experience with Edmunds. So can you please mention that? What is the name of this problem and how did you cope with that?
Edmunds is a company. It's a company that when you want to buy cars, you go online and you search for it and say that you want to buy a Honda Civic. They will tell you everything you want to know about it, including reviews and all the specifications. And then when you're ready to buy, you put in your zip code. And then they know where you are and they send you ads from the dealership. Now, the way they want to make money is by you clicking on these links to the dealership and ending up buying the car through this link. So then they get some kind of credit from the dealership. So what they did, they gave you a $400 incentives to do it. So if you bought the car through them, you got $400. Now, $400 is a lot of money, but
discount, right? So $400 discount, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So $400 is a lot of money, but if you buy a $25,000 car,
it's nothing.
Then $400 doesn't sound that much, right? What can you do? So what we did is looked at something that is called mental accounting. What's mental accounting? It means that not all expenses are the same. Some expenses are more painful for us than others. That's the idea. And if that's true, then maybe we can find something that you care about much more than $400 discount on $25,000 car. And what we came up with is exactly like what you said, the gas card. So filling up your car for $400, that's something that is really painful, and you can really imagine yourself. Unlike the $400 that you put as a small discount on a big price tag. Now you're thinking, oh, I can fuel my car for so long with this, right? It's going to be so nice, and you can really imagine. You can think about how enjoyable it's going to be to do it. Then the incentive goes a much longer way when you do it this way. And actually, like you mentioned, we found out with different groups of people. So ran the experiment online. Some of them were offered nothing. Some of them were offered $400 that worked on them. Some of them were offered only $200 in gas card.
And it worked better.
It worked better than $400, exactly. Because we can really feel it's really something that we care about.
So $200 worth of gas cards worked better than $400 discount.
Exactly.
Just because of this mental accounting. Very interesting.
Yes.
Okay, let me switch to another issue, a painful issue in United States healthcare. Despite the US being on the list of the countries with the highest per capita healthcare expenditure, interestingly enough, the life expectancy is lower than almost all developing countries. And in the book, you mentioned medical doctors ordering too many unnecessary tests and treatments, mainly because they are paid to do so, fee for service. And you are saying, quote, the National Academy of Medicine estimates that the US healthcare industry wastes $765 billion a year on unnecessary procedures, unquote. I know
that's
Turkey,
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but it's like a budget of a country. Like I know Turkey has similar problems too. I don't know about Israel. Can you please mention a little bit about this incentive problem and tell us what kind of incentives would be used instead in healthcare?
So when you go to a doctor that is being paid under what's called pay for service. The doctor is basically paid each time she sends you to have a procedure or to have a scan or whatever treatment she prescribed, she's going to be compensated. And if you think that this doesn't influence her decision, I think you're very naive, right? So imagine that you go to the doctor with a back problem. She looks at you, there you can think about three categories. One of them, she look at you and say, well, this guy just needs to go home, rest a bit, everything's going to be okay. The second category would be this guy, only a surgery will save him. He must have surgery. It's not going to go by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a third category, which is the gray area in between these two. And over there, it's a matter of judgment, and it's not clear, and you have to think what it is. And over there, if she knows she's a surgeon, right, and she knows that if she'll send you to surgery, she will get, I don't know, $2,000 for it. She's going to be influenced by these incentives. And if you look at the hospitals in which the surgeons for back surgery or for C-sections are compensated, you see many more procedures than in hospitals in which the doctors are not paid extra for this, right? So it really influences. It has lots of financial unnecessary cost. It's also health.
Mm-hmm.
So you do procedures that you shouldn't. Those are not, when you need a back surgery, when you need a C-section, you need to get it. But if you don't, it's better not to have it. And the incentive really changed. Now, in many cases, the physician herself will not know that she's doing something like that. She will not know that she's influenced by the money. Mm-hmm. We are really good at self-deception. We are really good at telling ourselves, well, I would have recommended this regardless of the incentives, but it's not.
So do you have the same problem in Israel?
So Israel is similar to Europe in many senses by being public system in which there is no extra treatment until you want something more. And then there is a private additional insurance, mm-hmm. right, that you pay more. And over there, the physicians are paid for service. So I would imagine that you get a lot of it here as well.
In Turkey, so even public hospitals, they give this incentive to public official doctors. Like if you are a doctor, a medical doctor in a public hospital, you are incentivized on top of your salary if you order these kind of tests or right. C-sections, whatever. Not even
and private. The reason, so I don't know if the reason is the same as in the US, but in the US, the reason hospitals are incentivizing physicians for this is that the hospital is being reimbursed much more. So the hospital is reimbursed much more for C-section than if you don't get a C-section. Maybe the strongest example of this is end-of-life care. So think about a person, sad story. The person goes to the doctor and the doctor tells him, sorry, you will not make it to Christmas anymore. I'm sorry, we did our best. Mm-hmm. There are two options. Either we can give you another round of chemo, but that's very costly. You're going to suffer. You're going to have nausea. It's not free in the sense of you'll feel bad. You live 2 months longer, but you're going to feel it's not going to be very high quality life. Or we can give you pain medication and make sure that you die peacefully at home 2 months earlier, right? But you'll die in much less pain and discomfort. I don't know which one is the right choice to make. I have my opinion. You might have a different opinion about that. So there's no right or wrong in this case. But the physician, if the physician and the hospital are paid extra, I don't know, $500,000 if you choose the first option of continued treatment versus the other one, they're going to recommend, they're going to maybe even misrepresent reality to some degree to you just to get you to do that, right? And that's bad, right? So they should give you the objective opinion, but they're not going to be objective if so much money is online. So first of all, I want to know what are the monetary incentives, what are the incentives of my physician? I want to be treated by a physician that all of their incentives is to see that I'm doing well. But if not, I will try to get to a second opinion. I will go, so in my case, I would go say, I live in the US, I'm going to be treated in the US at the end. But if I visit Israel, I can go to a local physician and ask that person, the physician, hey, look, that's what I recommended over there. They want me to do it. What's your opinion? And this person will not have any incentive one way or the other. That person can really, that physician can really look at it in a more objective way. And I would trust that opinion much more.
How would incentives help people stop bad habits?
Right. So changing habits is maybe the holy grail of incentives. Because changing one-time behavior is relatively simple. If I want you to go to the gym once, I can give you, I don't know, I'll give you $10,000, you go to the gym once. But if I want you to go over time to create a new habit, that's going to be much more difficult. That's why dieting is so hard, exercising is so hard, quitting smoking is so hard, because it's not once and done. It's really something that you have to think about. Eating is something that eating is harder than exercising, because eating, you need to be a good person for, I don't know, 18 hours that you are awake. It's enough that, you can be a good boy all day, and then you get home and you finish a piece of cake that you had over there, and your diet for the day is ruined. Exercising is easier because you need to behave only 1 hour a day, say. But the idea is that with incentives, you can really change what we call in economics the stock of behavior. So I don't know about you, but for many of us, we had periods in our life in which we exercised a lot, and then going to exercise was easy, and you actually sometimes even enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm a normal person. I have the same problem.
Right. And then you have periods in which you just sit on your sofa and you can't get yourself up to do it, right? Why does this happen? So one reason would be that the first time you go to the gym, it smells bad and you don't know where to park, and it's doesn't fit into your schedule, and you're embarrassed, all these things. But after a while, when you get used to it, it becomes more pleasant. You find the exact machines that you like actually using, and you fit it in your schedule, you know where everything is. It's much easier to do it. So you have some kind of hurdle that you need to go over. And incentives could really help in this. So together with Gary Charnes, we ran an experiment in which we paid people to go to the gym. For a month, we paid them if they went to the gym at least 8 times. And that worked. They worked to the gym. The question was, what's going to happen after that when they're done going to the gym?
That's the main question, right?
Exactly. And you can think about 2 alternative hypotheses. One of them is what we discussed before that we call crowding out, which is, well, if you want me to go to the gym, you need to pay me again. Otherwise, so I'm used now to be paid to go to the gym. I won't go to the gym if you don't pay me. So that would be the crowding out. Or you can get what we call crowd in, which is, oh, I've done it before. Actually, now I actually like it. You don't have to pay me anymore. I can actually go to the gym, and you created some kind of habit. And that's what we found. We found that it creates habit. Now, the opposite of this, so once you have this stock of behavior that we call, once you have this, recently you went to the gym a lot, the next time is going to be easier. The flip side of it could be about what you ask. How do you get rid of bad habits? So if you're a smoker, for example, I can pay you to quit smoking for a month, 2 months, half a year, and I can measure it, and I can pay you enough money maybe to stop doing it.
But what would happen after that?
Exactly. So it turns out that smoking is one of the worst addictions to get rid of. But there is some evidence that these programs, the programs that pay you to do it, actually work and reduce the bad habits in the long run.
Once I went to an orthopedics doctor, I had a problem with my knee, and then he recommended me a couple of exercises. I said, hey, doctor, thank you so much, but I keep forgetting this exercise that I have to do every morning and every evening. Like, I forget it because I'm busy with stuff. And he recommended to put some kind of signals everywhere in the home, like post-it, like some kind of colorful stuff, so that it would remind me that I should have an exercise. It worked for some.
Yeah. Right. So here's an example. Do you brush your teeth in the morning and in the evening?
Yeah.
Here you go. Just put it, together with this. Each time before I brush my teeth, I do the 5-minute exercise, right? So it's something like that. That's
I should put a post-it in front of my toothbrush.
Right, exactly. You want to pick up your toothbrush, first you need to do that, right? That kind of strategies work with, for example, with medications. So medication adherence is a big problem. People get medications that are really useful for them, but then they don't take them. Then, of course, they're not useful. If they sit in your cabinet, they don't really improve your health. And one of the reasons, there are many reasons, one of them is that people forget, like you did. The other reason that maybe you didn't find them pleasant, maybe you started to feel good about this. Right. There are other reasons why people don't take their medication or don't do the physiotherapy, but one of them is forgetting. And then if you can match it to, I drink coffee every morning. I boil coffee, Turkish coffee actually. So that's.
Do you like it, by the way? Do you like Turkish coffee?
I drink it every morning. Apparently, I do. Right. So if I can say, look, while it's boiling, I can do the physiotherapy. Right. Then you solve the forgetting part. And also you can say that's anyway a downtime because you have to look at it that it doesn't spill over and something like that. So that's the kind of things that I try to do.
How about you personally? Do you have these kind of problems and you know everything about incentives and everything? Like I remember an interview with Daniel Kahneman and he was saying that I have an overconfidence problem too, even though I wrote tons of papers.
So first of all, I think that people without bad habits are boring people, right? So if you don't have a bad habit, a couple of bad habits, you're just a boring person. I hate these kind of people. I definitely want to lose weight. I definitely want to kick out some of the other other habits that I have, and I think that that's a necessary condition for you to understand and to understand how habits work. If you don't, the people that, if you ask me about a group of people that I really dislike, are the skinny people that look down at fat people. Right? They got good genes. They don't understand the struggle that fat people, that overweight people have with losing weight, right? So they can spend really so much effort, and you look at the amount of effort and money, and people kill themselves because they can't lose weight, right? So it's not some kind of self-control. And in many cases, the skinny people, got different genes or whatever it is, and it's much easier for them to eat less. And other people don't, and they struggle with it. Now, the fact that you struggle with it doesn't mean that you should give up. You should say, okay, there's nothing to do, right? So, there is a difference between being slightly overweight and being obese, that it's health-wise problem. But you need to, I think that in order to understand the problems, you need to have some of them yourself. Otherwise, you're really boring. So in that sense, what Kahneman told you, I think I definitely sympathize with it. So someone who is not procrastinating is not going to be a good procrastination researcher.
Great. Okay, so this is my last question. This ties to our initial discussion on monetary incentives. In the last section of your book, you spare a chapter on incentives for vaccination. As you mentioned there, during the COVID-19 pandemic, some countries paid people to get vaccinated. So there are tons of questions I would ask, but what are your thoughts about this? What incentives work and work the best? What would be your recommendation?
So we have relatively little controlled experiments about this. We have lots of anecdotes about it. Mm-hmm. In general, the incentives that I don't like are incentives that offer you big rewards with some chance. So imagine that I ask you to help me with some experiments with drugs that I need to do. I'm giving you a pill, and the side effects are really minor. It's against headache. The side effects are really minor, and we just need to test it. And they'll tell you, now what, for your participation, I'll give you $50. Many people would agree to do it in order to help science. Mm-hmm. Now imagine that I tell you the same story, but I'll give you $50,000 for taking one pill. Now, maybe you'll do it, right? Maybe the $50,000 will be enough, but you'll be worried, right? Because why do I give you so much money? Probably it's really bad for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't give you so much money.
Right? I think Iowa implemented this kind of lottery. They paid $1 million, but there's a lottery.
Right. Few places in the US. So the signal that you get, well, if you're paying me $1 million to get vaccinated, probably something is really bad with this. So the kind of incentives that I really like would be, for example, instead of $1 million, take $50. How many of them are in $1 million? 2,000? 20,000.
20,000, yes, 20,000.
20,000. So give 20,000 people $50 gift certificate to buy something in the local stores. Right? So if you want to have coffee in your local coffee branch or a restaurant, give it to someone that you love. And the message should be, look, we really want to open up again. We want to open up your favorite coffee shop and your favorite whatever bookstore in the neighborhood. And the way to do it is for you to get vaccinated, because then everyone will be safer. right? So you give something and to send the right message by saying, look, we need to open up the world again. And if you get vaccinated, we can do that. So that's the way I would have chosen to use it.
Yeah, this is what is done where I live, by the way. They offered $50 gift card per dose per person, which is cool.
Right,
what do you-
and tie it with something that you need to do in your local environment. That's the best, I think.
They gave gift cards, which is you can use in anything you want.
Almost
Kind of
perfect.
cash, yeah.
Right.
Well, what do you think about this being unethical? Some people are saying that these payments they are taking advantage of people who are in need.
I think that getting vaccinated is really important. So I believe the science. I believe that this is really important. That's the only way that we can get out of a pandemic like this.
Mm-hmm.
Open up again. And I don't think that this is targeting. I don't think that that's if I ask you to do something bad, then you can say, oh, so if I build an army based on people that are paid, so a professional army, then you can say, well, your kids will not go, but their kids will have to go because they don't have money to do that. Over there, I see the ethical issue with vaccination. I think that everyone should get vaccinated. And if you have different ways to target different people, I don't see an ethical problem with it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation, and congratulations on your incredibly inspiring and amazing book.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Yuri. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This concludes my conversation with Uri Gneezy. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that this podcast helped you understand that incentives are complex, case-specific, and are shaped largely by human behavior. As always, you can reach me via Twitter or email. My Twitter handle is Dr. Orhan Erdem, which is D as in Delta, R as in Romeo, my first name and my last name together. And my email is orhanerdem@gmail.com, which is my first name and last name together. Hope to see you in the next podcast, Financially Yours.